Well, good Saturday and game day morning, friends. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. So let's get open for business here and let's wake up the football gods. Hope everybody's having a great Saturday morning. I am feeling good. I'll be able to watch the game here in the man cave late tonight, 10 o'clock. And we're going to have some pregame festivities.
Are you not entertained?
That's right. Isn't that why you are here? We're going to be on Game Time and Primetime Phil's channel tonight while they eat the chip. The chip. I mean the chip. Yeah, and I hope that you guys, if you're there enjoying them go through pain, then you need to at least subscribe to the channel. Give them the thumbs up, give them a like and all that, because at 7 o'clock tonight we'll be on there. We'll be talking about a preseason game, okay? The pregame show with the coup de grace being Primetime, who has stomach issues, and Game Time eating the chips. So definitely look for that tonight, 7 o'clock. And of course, we will be doing the live stream tonight late. So I might want to take a nap at some point. But be that as it may, as we are here on the cusp of the season, we are 19 days, 11 hours, 5 minutes, and 40 seconds away from kickoff of the season. We've got the New York Stinking Giants 3 weeks from tomorrow. The Dallas Cowboys have broke camp at Oxnard. The season is upon us. But I will say, as much as people will say the Cowboys need to get football people in there to do football things, the reality is even with football people there, it doesn't mean that you're going to win the Super Bowl. There's a lot of teams that have not won the Super Bowl in recent history. There's a lot of teams that have never won the Super Bowl. It's hard. Sometimes you can have a great team, great players and all that, or you can have great coaches. You have to have everything all line up together. Great coaches, great players, bit of luck with the officials, call or two go your way, the ball bounces your way. And even with all those things, even if you're great in free agency, it still may not be enough, Eagles, to win the Super Bowl. But I will say that the Cowboys, with where they were, with money, with the players, the rosters, the coaches, everything, they probably have done about as good a job as you could do. We all have the name players that we want to go out. We were thinking about DeAndre Hopkins and stuff. Oh, we need to go get DeAndre Hopkins and stuff. And, of course, a lot of people still think we should have kept Zeke. But the Cowboys ended up saying, okay, we're going to take Zeke. We're going to get rid of him. We're going to try to get better at the position and use that money elsewhere. And you have to look at it and say the Cowboys did an autopsy of the season last year. And the Achilles heel for the Cowboys have been in the playoffs, a couple of things. A lack of running production in the playoffs. A lack of stopping the run. And literally just running out of players, good players, to play in the playoffs. Those are the three things that have killed us in the playoffs. Oh, let me go through. Because I know the haters. What about Dak Prescott? He killed us too. Yeah. Okay. Well, when you end up having the problems with those three, when your running backs are only getting like 40 yards, when your defense is giving up sometimes 170 yards on the ground, and your weapons are gone, it ends up being only the quarterback that's your only hope, and that's not enough. But be that as it may, here's where they've gone through and they've tried to address things. If you looked at last week's preseason game where the Jacksonville Jaguars played their starters early in the game, you look at the depth that we have on defense. One of the problems we had was we recognized early in the season that we need a run stopper, and we went out and got Hankins. Hankins was doing great, but Hankins got hurt. Hankins wasn't there when we needed him. So what did they do? They re-signed Hankins because he played really good and made a difference in run stopping. But they said we can't just rely on one guy. So they go out and they get Mozzie Smith. Now, Mozzie Smith, the Eagle fans will tell you, he's a bust, he's a bust. He only had one tackle. That ain't his job, bro. That ain't his job. His job is to make it easy for everybody else. And I can't wait for tonight to see what he does. So now you got two big men, and you've got Quentin Bohannon, who's finally learned to stay low with that big body. I mean, low, 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 low. And with that size, that strength, that weight, and being the low man, immovable. So the Cowboys now have a front of guys that are big, massive, the half ton of fun, I like to call it. The half ton of fun defense that they can put in there to help stop the run. Okay. And they have enough depth that when they lose those guys in the battle of attrition, they can go through. You can look through, and I still don't understand how people say that the Eagles are, Bart Scott, the Eagles got better secondary. And you on crack. You on crack, bro.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
We about to get back another cornerback in Jordan Lewis on top of all the guys that we already have. We have depth at safety that are happy as can be because they've got their contracts money guaranteed right now. These guys are ready to ball. We got linebackers galore, and now we got big men that could tie up the offensive line. So now you look at it and say, this to end one of the best edge rushing run stoppers in DeMarcus Lawrence. You look at that and say, problem number one for the Cowboys, they have addressed. Problem number two is the depth we had at weapons. The biggest weapon we had last year, CeeDee Lamb, which we weren't sure was going to be a big weapon this time last year, and Tony Pollard. We lost Tony Pollard against the 49ers, and then we just had one. Michael Gallup, of course, recovering, was on one leg. Noah Brown, well, Noah Brown was Noah Brown. You go out and you get Brandon Cooks, a deep threat, to go with CD, who is ascending. Michael Gallup, you're seeing he's got moves again and can move freely. You now have three guys that are really good. Now, I don't want to get too excited about one preseason game, but then you start looking at Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert last week looked better than what you got from Noah Brown, who ended up being your second leading receiver. So now all of a sudden you've got guys that are fast, that are deep threats, and you have depth in it with your receivers. Problem four, running the football. Everybody's getting super hyped about Deuce Vaughn. 5'6". Speed, stop on a dime and redirect. I'm not there yet. He played in the second half against, third stringers and things like that. I want to see tonight. I want to see some more. I still worry about a guy who will be a banger. And this is where I actually think that Ronald Jones may make the roster. They don't have to make a decision on him right away because he'll be suspended for the first two games. But I think you need a guy who can be a power back. And I think Ronald Jones may end up being that role for us going forward. And in some regard, him being suspended may work into the favor for him to actually stay on the roster, because then you've got that extra spot that you don't have to worry about, that you can bring somebody else there to really go ahead and say, we've got this guy, to get past that onslaught of all the big cuts. So when I look at this, I say, yeah, the Cowboys have gotten themselves into a great position. Now, that's step number one in a marathon. There are 17 games, 17 landmines that we got to go through. And you don't know who's going to be good and who's going to be bad. I was having a discussion last night with Game Time, because what we do know is this. Typically, half of the teams that were playoff teams last year aren't the next year. And it doesn't matter if you're the Super Bowl champion, like the Rams were. Everybody looked and said the Rams are a top 5 team. They ended up being a bottom 5. They ended up imploding the team, getting rid of talent to start over. So you don't know what you don't know. And I will say that there are a few chinks in the armor of a couple of teams. People will say Brock Purdy is great, but they haven't been talking about the sophomore slump. That shit's real. And the reason why it's real is now people know what you do. People know what you do. Defensive coordinators and defensive groups have been studying every aspect of your game, every tendency, and now they know who you are. Whereas a rookie, there wasn't film out on you. And Brock Purdy, believe it or not, has been throwing interceptions left and right in training camp. Kyle Shanahan says, I'm not worried about it. Well, there's not much you can do. You got rid of Jimmy G, who couldn't stay on the field. You got Sam Darnold, who is Sam Darnold. And then you got, I can't even think of his name. Dude is so bad, he was a wasted number 1 pick for him. Worrying about the situation ain't going to help you none at this point. Trey Lance. And for all you mother humpers, just draft a quarterback. He's a first-round drafted quarterback, so he's going to be great. That's some bullshit. Look at all these first-round busts that are out there. Kyler Murray may be kicked to the curb. Mac Jones is ass. Josh Rosen. Come on, man. It's few and far between out there. But be that as it may, I'm hyped up for the day. I am so hyped up. I got work to do in my workshop here. I got to get my man Rashid over to get a new phone and stuff later on today. I'm going to be working on the outdoor studio because we've been neglecting that space and stuff. We're going to be getting ready for the game day, and I'll be doing some work in the workshop. Lord knows I got to clean that mother humper up. There's piles of sawdust and things. But I just love Dan Quinn for a multitude of reasons. Here's the thing. Dan Quinn and I are about the same age, but I'm not quite as gray as Dan Quinn, though. He's got a few more gray hairs than I do, so I feel good about that. But Dan Quinn's not a really big man either. But Dan Quinn and I have a lot in common. We were both nose guards. We were the men in the middle. And that, my friends, gives you a different perspective. And when I love listening to Dan Quinn speak, and I actually love listening to Brian Schottenheimer, okay, as opposed to Jason Garrett. Oh, God. And see, Jason Garrett, I'm going to tell you, Rashid, you can see the difference between Brian Daboll and Jason Garrett, can't you? Okay, all right. So think that the Cowboys had that for 10 years, okay? Think about that. But be that as it may. He says something in this interview, and I haven't watched the whole thing, but he talks about going to the edge, when you push guys to the edge. And football relates to me in so many ways in life. And I'll explain it after we listen to him a little bit. I'm not going to do the whole interview, but he is fantastic, and you can see why the guys are ready to run through a brick wall for him.
We're all together. I talked probably about getting to camp and all the things that why I was excited, what to do, and so now a little bit of full circle to say leaving camp and what did we learn in, if it's 3 months or 3 weeks or whatever it is. Kind of the fun part of training camp is just absolutely being in the moment of the day, and so there was a lot. Talked about emerging roles, over the. We had to wait till the padded practices to see what some of that would look like. We talked about where some of the young guys' development would be and have a vision of what that could look like. The other piece was just, I thought, a great example in practice the other day. I thought it was competitive and good, and it was really a lot of guys expressing to themselves and to others how we play and how hard we want to go compete. I think that's such a valuable lesson for the young player to learn how far you can push it, to really be where you want to. Thinking of a play in the red zone where I thought Hooker and Curse were really wide open every bit they could to go for it. There was another play of all the plays I just tried to show some of the young ones to say, this is what it looks like. And if you really want to push it and express yourself to how we can play, there should be some examples of that. And so we don't get that in an OTA. We don't get that in that space. This is where it goes down. And no finer guys to go against than some of the players on the offense to really show that they can do it. And so That's why I thought it was kind of a full circle couple weeks to say, getting here, why I was excited to get here, and then leaving here, why am I excited to see roles emerging, young players developing, the standard of competition that we expect to really get our skills right, because that's how you have to go. And so I thought those three things stood out to me over the last few weeks to say, what are we leaving here with? And that stood out to me.
It's coming up.
The fights aside, your defense seems to play with an edge. Fights, as Michael said, they're a bunch of dogs. Are they like that? Do you make them like that? Did you bring them here like that? Just talk about that whole mentality of what you got on defense.
Yeah, I think, regarding the fights, the topic I discussed with them yesterday, you really are trying to find an edge. And sometimes when you're finding it, you have to go off it to see how far I can really, push it to go. So you have to fall off the cliff some to find where your edge is. But those are the moments that you do it in practice to find, not just fighting, I'm saying the real speed, the real competitiveness. We do have to take care of one another. And at the end of it, that's our bond to one another, and we push each other to get better. And the old phrase of, iron sharpening iron, it's so true for a football team in a training camp setting to say, we are on that space together, but can we push one another to really see how good we can get? And so moments
there
like
you
that,
go.
When you go over, that's fighting. You fell off the cliff. You went to the edge too far. But there was lots of plays yesterday that were really competitive, going as hard as you can, safely done. And those moments are important too, because that's where you find where I can set that edge too of how I compete and how I go. And I think if you asked all the players, they would agree that days like that where the competition is really at its most intense in a controlled environment, we all need that. And I thought that was a good example of that yesterday. But getting back to your original question of it, it's something that you have to talk about every day. It's not, okay, we just add one player, add one thing. I think the standard and the energy that a team can play with, that's at the top of the pile, the top of the list, and you had better make it part of our identity. So every time our friends and family and fans watch us play, they say these guys get it on, and you can't take a day off from that.
Amen. I'm going to watch the rest of the interview and stuff because I love listening to Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is incredible. Dan Quinn, in case you hadn't realized it, has brought the intensity of the Legion of Boom, that mentality. And see, this is where one of those cases where there are guys that are great field generals versus the commander. And I'm not sure that Dan Quinn's true calling is being a head coach. There are a lot of guys that are incredible dealing with the sausage, making the sausage, that not necessarily are the best business-minded people. And I'm not trying to say this to denigrate because he took the Atlanta Falcons to a Super Bowl. But you see what Dan Quinn has done in the short time that he has been here with this defense. You could say, well, maybe he was just lucky in Seattle and ended up just having great talent. You can look at the Dallas Cowboys in 2020 and say it was a talent desert. That defense was so bad, you had guys calling out the coaches saying it's too complex. You had safeties that looked like they were freaking lead blockers. Oh my God, the pursuit angles and the fundamentals were completely gone. They were non-existent. I literally pulled a Donovan McNabb and threw up my Italian sub watching the defense. As a guy who played defense and had self-respect, I looked at these guys and say, how the hell can you look in the mirror with the performance that you put out here? You were beyond ass. To say you were ass would have been a compliment to as bad as those guys were. But yet this guy has changed the mentality, the philosophy. He has found talent where others looked around and said, Jaron Curse, myth. Who? That guy? He's a journeyman. He's found guys like Malik Hooker that people looked at and said, they're not great. They're coming off injuries. He finds the ultimate weapon in a Micah Parsons. He finds linebackers that are young, that are looking to be really good later in the draft. He has set forth a mentality of we're not taking shit from nobody. And if you're Daniel Jones, week one, you're probably going to piss in your pants. And you won't be the only one. This team, this defense is ready to rock and roll. And you have to look at one guy. And this is where coaching matters. And just like I pointed out the difference, because I'm going to give the Giants credit. The Giants and Daniel Jones, Daniel Jones had a great season last year. He didn't have a lot of weapons. I'm being truthful here, okay? And that's right, Rashid. Smile, be happy over there. The difference is having a freaking Jason Garrett as an offensive coordinator who literally looks like he fell off the salad truck with his shit-eating grin versus having great coaching in Brian Diebold, who's instilled an attitude along with technicians to actually understand what a player does. Coaching freaking matters. Players freaking matters. And you still need every piece of those and a bit of luck if you're going to hold up that trophy at the end of the year. And I will say that the Dallas Cowboys, my biggest concern is depth on the offensive line. If Tyron Smith stays healthy, if Terrence Steele is back to where he was, we are good on the offensive line. But I worry if we get one or two injuries there. That's my biggest spot. But I have to look at the Cowboys and say, holistically, the fact that they're getting their deals done with keeping their players, the fact that they have instilled an aggression, the fact that they have basically rebuilt the roster in front of us without tearing it all apart, that we are one of the youngest teams in the NFL, that we're coming off 2 12-5 seasons, and you have to look at this and say, we're a better team. Will that result in better results? I can't honestly say. But I know from where we were last year to where we are today, this team is better. And with that being said, I got a lot of work to do here because it's going to be a full day. And maybe I'm going to check to see if I got some chicken wings in the freezer because you know what? I might try and help Brian out a little bit in game time. I'm sorry, prime time and game time. I might just try and help them out a little bit. I might do some Jobu wings and put some of that ghost pepper hot sauce on them and take one of those. Because I'm going to tell you, you'll remember when we did that wing challenge, me and DMV. Ooh, that ghost pepper one. And we'll sprinkle some Calypso on top of it, too. So that way I'll be burning a little bit with the guys. All right? So tune in tonight. It's game day, good people. Let's get ready to get out of here. Peace.
Our coach here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Sports Report.
That's you guys. How about them Cowboys? Peace.